they seem to make the case that metrics that involve human flourishing or even human death aren't relevant because the primary issue is to restore the biosphere to something approximating what it hypothetically was before there were human beings, which is a rather strange notion, all things considered. And so, what do you think about that argument? What metrics should we be using to determine whether or not a climate emergency actually exists?
Well, I definitely think we should be using a human flourishing metric, but in a broad sense. So the climate disaster deaths are not the only aspect of that, but they're a very important aspect. We can also see that damages are flat or down. We can see that life overall is much better. And actually, our ability to preserve the most valuable parts of nature is better. Generally, when you're not dependent on the land and dependent on wood, dependent on your local environment for your fuel, and you're wealthy, you can be much better at preserving the parts of nature that you want to preserve. If you look at places in Africa and Asia, and even now Europe, because they're now energy poor, like cutting down their forests, it's because they don't have better sources of fuel. So, but I would challenge the idea that Ehrlich is really using this, I think you called it biophilic standard, because if you look at his public rhetoric, he's always appealing to a human flourishing standard. So how did Ehrlich become famous? He became famous through the 1968 book, The Population Bomb, where he's telling human beings not, hey, the planet is going to become more impacted and that's intrinsically bad. He's saying you're all going to starve. And his close colleague, Sean Holdren, who was Obama's chief science advisor, he predicted in the 80s that we'd have up to 1 billion climate-related disaster deaths from famine by 2020, which has come and gone, and the world is better fed than ever. So what I find is that people who, I think internally, they don't really care about human flourishing, and they're really optimizing for eliminating our impact as much as possible, but they appeal to human flourishing to win over converts. Because if they really said the best possible Earth is the one that would exist had we never existed, and our goal is to eliminate as much human impact as possible as an end in itself, they would not win many converts.